Welcome to Fun and Fundraising, everybody, the podcast where we talk with people behind top nonprofit galas and signature fundraising events to showcase how they positively transform their communities. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, and today I'm really excited to have a very special guest on. So we have my friend Henry Yao, and Henry is the Vice President of Public Relations at the Children's Museum of Houston. And one of the reasons I have Henry on today is the Children's Museum of Houston really does an amazing job of getting their message out, not just for their signature fundraising events, but for the organization more broadly across a multiple array of mediums. So I have seen Henry on TV segments, radio segments, podcast segments like this one. So he really understands the full spectrum of, media that's out there. And on top of that, the subject of this podcast is fun and fundraising, and Henry always has a blast whenever he is promoting the museum. So I can't think of a better person to talk about this topic than him. So Henry, welcome. I'm so thrilled to have you on as a guest today.
Thank you so much. That was an amazing intro. I didn't know I did all those things.
You did it so much more. So, with your newly minted title as Vice President of Public Relations and very well deserved. So, while we're on that subject, so talk about your professional path to get to that point, because I know you have a pretty varied, background in media and public relations.
Absolutely. Well, I've been with the Children's Museum for nearly 18 years now, and it has been a path of growth. I always say like I always say there's something new to learn at the Children's Museum. But my it wasn't always at the Children's Museum. My background is in journalism. I was in journalism for 5 years previous to working at the Children's Museum, and I think that really helped my job now because working in the newsroom, I kind of know what is it that news people look for. What story angles, what visuals are they going to need, that kind of, what is the juicy stuff of what I'm trying to pitch. So that really helped with what I'm doing today and what I've been doing for the last 18 years.
Wow. So, I'm glad that you mentioned, you got your start in journalism, but talk about the pivot, so what was like the biggest adjustment for you when you went from the media side to the public relations side? What was the biggest thing, biggest thing you had to get used to when you made that pivot?
It's gonna sound kind of terrible, but I was like, where are the cameras?
Oh.
Yeah, I was working. My last job was with our local Fox TV station, and then I was used to seeing cameras and being in a studio like every single day. And so I wasn't working in an office setting. So when I got to the Children's Museum, although it was really fun at the galleries, we work in the offices, and being in front of a computer to me was every day was kind of weird. It was a weird feeling, like, hey, where are the cameras? Where's the scripts? But yeah, that was probably the one big major difference. But everything else has been great. I think what the takeaway from doing this transition was the storytelling, which is really the key point, right? Even though I'm not focusing on several different stories that would happen in news, I'm just focusing on the several different stories that come out of the Children's Museum.
And I'm glad we're talking about that because that's a really good segue into kind of what I want to talk about here as we kind of dive into PR. And one thing is having an effective PR strategy. And the Children's Museum of Houston just has always done a first-class job of that. So talk about how an effective PR strategy is a vital part of the overall success, not just of an organization. Let's first talk about the organization, the Children's Museum, but also then we can dive a little bit more deeply into events.
Sure. So the strategy for the Children's Museum's PR team is really to um, not only to focus, well, okay, here's what we normally do. Normally, if you look at other bigger museums than the Children's Museum, they primarily use advertising as a medium to get to people to come to their museum. Well, the advertising budget for the Children's Museum Houston is very, very small in comparison to other museums. So what we do is we supplement our advertising with PR. What that allows us to do is it allows us to get that media coverage to supplement for advertising, right? But it allows us to do different things. It allows us to tell not just one message, but different messages all the time. So the strategy for us, we not only use it to supplement it, but we use it to get people to come to the museum during different times of the years through different types of topics and events that we have all year long.
That's great. And I'm glad you're talking about that. And you mentioned kind of this, we'll call it a steady diet, that you have different things that are going on all year
Exactly.
long. So talk a little bit about, the planning that goes into that and how you map that out and how you pick and choose which media levers to pull when.
That's a tough one. Okay, so we do normally, we kind of almost already know at the, having been worked at the museum for so long, we kind of already know that we have key seasons of the year of how the Children's Museum needs to operate. Our big seasons are, spring break, summer, Halloween, Thanksgiving, winter break, and then it just cycles off. During those time periods, we have several key events that we like to identify for our PR strategy. We know that there are, national holidays that will resonate with media, like for example, July 4th, Martin Luther King Day, Black History Month, those type of things. But there are also, your more quirky holidays, that we would like to pitch in, like we have, bubble wrap day, or we have, duct tape day, those kinds of things. So I kind of like for our media strategy, what we normally do is we try to identify what's going to happen on a calendar, like sort of like an editorial calendar that we want to pitch, but then we also want to combine them with the quirky holidays because we know that some of those things can get boring all the time. Like they know we're going to cover those, but we like to throw in some quirky things that might pique someone's interest. And then we also like to make room for some things that might be relevant. For example, if there are certain topics that people are talking about, for example, like a Taylor Swift, and then we just so happen to have a Taylor Swift day, right? So then we'll pivot our message to fit those topics to relevancy.
I'm glad you kind of talked about, relevant topics, but I'm also glad you kind of brought up corking off the wall. So, what is a piece of advice you would give to somebody about about pitching something that's a little bit out of the box, but it's not so far out of the box that they're kind of rolling their eyes when a media outlet opens it.
Well, we want it to be quirky enough to be accessible to families, right? Like it's something that they can relate to. For example, duct tape. They know parents and families will find duct tape at their home, right? And it's you can get it at Home Depot for cheap. So we want to make sure that these things are relatable to the public and that they can use. And I know that media will use that as a way to like, hey, parents, you can also do this, and you can basically bring the museum home with you through those types of activities.
That's really good. And, in speaking of activities, Houston is a very active city. So talk about how you all really make sure that you're tapping into the personality of Houston. And Houston is full of personality. So, I'm sure that this is a somewhat easier thing to do there than maybe some other cities. But talk about how you tap into that soul and persona of the community when you're doing your pitches, and then more importantly, like when you're on camera and you're on air.
Yeah, I can tell you that Houston has a very short attention span. Uh,
You said it, Henry, not me.
um, we like to say that we like to focus on bringing people back by offering different things every single weekend. We really have 96 events and performances during the entire year. 96, that's a lot for us. Whereas other organizations are more focused on exhibits, we're more focused on events. Now that, from a marketing perspective, it's great because then we have this constant content creation that we can throw out there to our social media, to our e-blast, to our website, and then it allows us to create more content. It allows us for more promotion, and it definitely allows us for more PR opportunities.
I'm all right. So 96, I'm sure someone's hearing, listening that like 96 events, that's a lot. Now, I want to assure you that they are, and we'll talk about the Children's Museum Gala later. They are not 96 galas, they're 96 events. So there's a little bit of a difference. So talk a
Right.
little bit about the range of the events and how, you can make an event on small or even, if you're doing that many events, I'm sure some of the events probably have a nominal, if zero budget sometimes or very close to zero.
Oh my
How
goodness.
do
Yeah.
you, how do you, with that many different events, how are you kind of targeting different audiences to get the types of people you want at each of those individual events there?
Yes, so we have several different audiences, primarily, and it all really depends on the school year. We know that when kids are off for vacation, we know that we're going to be targeting the older audiences. So we try to make events that would cater to those things. Like, for example, we have things related to dinosaurs, we have things that are related to spice, topics that are more relevancy to older kids, like gaming, that type of things. When kids go back to school, like for example in September during the fall, our we pivot our programming to make it more early childhood. So if you see all of our programming like in September, October, in the beginning of October, it'll be more early childhood literacy, things that are related to how to take care of my child, even like things like sign language for babies. We do those types of programming. And then we have other types of topics, like what you mentioned in terms of events. In general, we have our fundraising events, which is a completely different audience. Like they don't have to necessarily come to the museum, but it's an audience that might be related to supporting the museum in different ways.
I'm glad you talked about that. So talk a little bit about when you're pitching media with events, how are how is the approach different for you when you're kind of talking about events that would be at the museum versus kind of the fundraising ones that are the luncheons and the galas and the things like that? How does your strategy and approach with those media outlets differ?
Oh, it's completely different. So I have several lists. I've got like probably 8 different key lists that I use. I call them my master list. Those are like my babies. Like you can't take those away. No, seriously. Like I'm not sharing that list. What I do is, and they're split in what the targets that I want. Like for example, if it's an event that it's happening this Saturday, I have what I call my day of event list. What that really means is like, let's say for example, if Beyonce were to show up at the Children's Museum tomorrow, right? I could send to my day of event list for coverage, and they could come out immediately for that. Versus my weekly list. If it's something that I know that they'll need, like for example, if it's like a TV segment where they'll want to book a guest, and that's not something that I can send like, hey, it's gonna happen tomorrow. They'll need some time in advance for me to like, do that. So what I'll do is I'll make sure that I have that press release and those topics way in advance. I'll send them at least within 2 to 3 weeks before the event happens. So then those producers can book if they're interested. And then I have my society list. My society list is for this as our fundraising events. They're things that are scheduled way in advance and that I can send months in advance to let them know like, hey, this is save the date for these events and these are the events that are going to happen in October or in the spring. So I segment those audiences based on the topics of interest and when they're going to happen.
You laid that out really, really well. And what I really liked is you kind of got your immediate list, the people that can kind of they're going to want to do stuff on the fly. Like, what types of media outlets tend to do that? Is that more like the influencer Instagram crowd? Like, who is that kind of, day of last minute audience that you're kind of reaching out to? Because that's a concept we've never really dived in deeply with on this show.
Yeah, yeah. So the ones who are interested in like things that are happening last minute will be your local news outlets, and not only just TV, but also digital. Those are the ones that can print something up right away on their website, or if they're interested, they'll run it the 10 p.m. news. Hopefully, we'll never make the 10 p.m. news because that's serious stuff.
Oh
But
yeah.
but like maybe like the morning news, something more fun, right? Those are the ones that I know will run something, for the weekend, or or news outlets that have like a Thursday or Friday segment where they're like, hey, this is what you can plan to do with your children this weekend, right? So they're the ones that would normally run those things. Whereas the other media outlets are more long leads, right? So we can spend more time pitching to them in advance so that we'll book them for a later week.
I'm glad you laid out kind of, when and how to approach different, different types of
Right,
organizations for different things, because different things are going to have different runways and different lead times.
right.
And I think people are so used to the news cycles 25/8, but it's not all spontaneous.
Right,
As
correct.
fast as it moves, there's a level of there's a level of
Pre-planning.
fluidity to it, yeah, and pre-planning that you have to do. And before we kind of dive into the event piece, the one thing I always admire about you, and I love following you on social media, I just I always smile whenever I see you post. Every single appearance I have ever seen you on, I watch a lot of them because I'll see you post and share on them. You always show up like you want to be there. You're willing to have fun. You're willing to engage really well with whoever the guest is. So talk a little bit about the importance of showing up as a reason that you continue to get press, because a lot of it is, yes, you can send out a release, but when you're an ambassador and you show up like you always want to be there, that really sets you apart from others.
Thank you for that. I never take for granted all these opportunities. I know that producers, editors have a choice to select who they want to invite to those shows. So I never take that for granted. I also I have it in me that I need to like deliver, right? Like if they invited me, like I need to show up, I need to give them my 100% because I was on the other end at one point and I know what it means to like put on a show and like, hey, you want to see visuals. So there's two things that I always keep in mind whenever I go to these things is what is my narrative going to be about? Like I want to give them a good story. It can't just be like, hey, come to our event because A, B, C, and D. It's going to be like your family's going to be wowed if you come to our event. Um, so that's what I keep in mind, number one. Number two is I always like to try to provide some sort of visuals, or even if I don't have the visuals, to tell a story about those visuals, right? I think that's very important, especially like on a TV segment. Like I want to make sure that I showcase something, right? And then number three, like I think attitude is contagious. So like if I bring it, then I think the host like we'll just feel that energy in that and those good vibes, and I think that'll always make for a great conversation. And I always know that not everything is going to be perfect on a live segment, but even if it's like terrible, like we can always have a great time.
And you can improvise. The kind of the thing is with live, it is improv. It is yes and.
Yeah,
So you just
exactly.
kind of have to roll with whatever whatever punches come your way. And I want to ask a follow-up question to that. And you talked a little bit earlier about kind of the pre-planning with TV segments, but I think part of the reason that you get invited so often, I got to imagine this happens, if someone drops out, and it happens all the time. I know you know this from your TV producing
Yes.
days. If someone drops out and they need a guest, they may be likely to call you because they know that you're going to show up and you're going to bring something fun. So talk a little bit, what advice would you give to somebody if to get them to say yes if they get, a last minute pitch from a TV station, like be here tomorrow morning and be able to ready
Yes.
to talk for 3 minutes about said topic?
I know it's very difficult from the perspective of somebody who hasn't been in the news. And when having been in the news and having been in the situation where I'm a producer and someone has a cancel and I'm looking for a backup. So I always say yes. I always say yes first, and then I'll try to make it happen somehow. It's like we're gonna be there. Count on us. Let me get you details, right? And I know it put us on a bind, but part of PR is building those relationships, right? It's really that building that trust. If and I'll tell you in a couple of examples. There was a time when there was a mess up on one TV station. I'm not gonna name it
We don't
because
name names here. Everyone's in a positive light on fun and
right.
fundraising.
And we literally were banned for almost a year, right? It was just like they're not inviting us back, right? Not my fault. It was something internal that happened there where there was a miscommunication. But we were banned from that TV show for about a full year. Now I get a call on the day before Christmas. It was Christmas Eve, 24th. They're like, hey, we have an emergency. I know Christmas is tomorrow, but can you show up and bring something? And so I said immediately, I was like, this is my opportunity to like earn back that trust. And so you want to be that person that they can count on because chances are if you deliver, they're going to continue to invite you back. And so I did it. And my advice to anybody in PR is don't take those opportunities for granted. Always try to find a way to be there because you're going to build out your credibility and also that relationship with your contact there. So yeah, we were there
Absolutely.
on Christmas Day.
Even on Christmas Day. But what I like about that is, a lot of those things can be cyclical. And what happens is if someone is upset with you, and I found this over the years, and both of you and I have been doing what we've been doing for a
Yeah,
while, there will always be someone new, and then there's a new group, and they don't even remember what happened before. So that's
right.
kind of why it's always good to have goodwill. And if you if something happens and you're not invited back for a while, don't burn that bridge
Right, correct.
because that bridge will have to be rebuilt at some point because invariably some leadership is going to they may leave they may leave that outlet or they may have a different role within that
Right,
organization. There's a new person in charge and they don't care.
right, correct. Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's just really important to, keep those things in mind. I mean, that was really, thank you so much I've always wanted to chat with you about that. So I'm really glad that we have. And, you also all do a slate of really, really well-produced events. You have a luncheon that's great. You have a gala every year that's great. I want to talk a little bit about, and we can kind of shift to the fundraising aspect of this.
Sure.
So talk a little bit about how you work with media partnerships for your events and kind of how you may market, a luncheon differently than a gala, as an example.
Absolutely. So I can start with the gala because I think the gala is the fun one to talk about because I know everybody likes the gala, right? The
Yeah.
luncheon is like, it's a luncheon. I don't know, we'll be there. And I'm talking about from a media perspective,
Yeah.
right? So the gala for me is for the museum is the biggest fundraising event that we have. So the pressure is on to deliver the best photos, the best story, the best narrative on behalf of the Children's Museum. So whenever we talk about media partnerships for the gala, it's something that I do with a fundraising team. It's like, hey, we've got all these, we kind of identify the media outlets that are there, including the little ones, and we never take anyone for granted. It's like the big ones and the little ones are as equally important because any coverage is good coverage, and that is our motto. Particularly whenever we choose a media partner, that really comes from the selection of our fundraising team and our chairs, because our chairs are sort of they're not the deciding factor, but they have a big influence on how we want to approach the gala narrative. So that's kind of how we decide on a media partner. The second part is sort of inviting our media to attend. And granted, our tables are like it's like a 10 table, so we have to make sure that we pick like our guests very carefully. What I like to do is I'm a little biased. I like to go with people who supported the Children's Museum before, and that's how I start my list. It's like, okay, hey, they helped us before. We should like invite them. And so that's kind of I approach my media list. I would say for someone who's just starting, like let's say this was something new for them, I would always invite all of them, like invite them and see who can actually make it. But yeah, I'm a little bit more selective now that I can, because I go for those key supporters, key advocates of the Children's Museum, and that's how I start my media list for partnerships.
I'm glad that you bring that up because I think some people are like, I've got to invite everybody and everybody has to attend and everyone's got to write about it. And the fact of the matter is that there's a lot of nonprofits out there doing really good work. So people, just like you're selective,
Right.
the media outlets have to be selective. And it's okay. It's almost like when you go to a party, you're going
Yeah.
to vibe with some people better than others. It's the exact same thing with, with media and partnerships. But I think you gave some really good advice of because you've been doing this for a while, you know which outlets that you can count on, and they're the ones that you're going to want to be there. You know that you're going to have a good partnership. You know that they're going to provide great coverage either before the event or after the event. So I really appreciate you kind of laying out why those things matter and why they're so important.
For sure. And the luncheon list it looks completely different. Like I know there are certain media outlets that could not or will not be able to attend during a time frame like it's lunchtime, it's in the middle of the day, middle of the week, it's there, like they have deadlines to meet, that kind of stuff. So I for a fact know that there are these certain media outlets that will attend and can invite them. And so then my luncheon list looks completely different than my gala list. And yeah, and that's kind of how it works because I know that they'll be there and that we can count on their support.
I'm glad you talked about the difference between those two because who attends a luncheon is very different from who attends a
Yep.
gala, and it's also very similar to who attends a gala. It just kind of, but it's not the same. It's definitely a different recipe. They both may be bread, but one's brioche and one's ciabatta. They're
There
very
we
different
go.
types of bread.
I love that analogy. Yes, yes, you described it so well.
So, you were talking about partnerships earlier, and one of the things, Phillips 66 has been such a long-term supporter of yours. how do you go about creating these successful long-term partnerships with top companies and corporate partners in your area and have them come back year after year?
Oh, okay. So I'm not the expert in fundraising partnerships, corporate partnerships, but I can tell you that we have worked with amazing, amazing companies. And I think it comes from the credibility that we provide, right? So when we are able to prove to these companies that the Children's Museum does serve, these many kids through these many programs. Phillips 66, for example, they were in their initiative was in literacy. So what we demonstrated to them over the years, in order to keep these sponsorships going, is showcasing really how our literacy programs impacted families and their children. And I think that's what keeps them coming back, right? It's proof of performance is really what it comes down to. So I know our development team, whenever they approach a corporation, they're very serious about these numbers and these stats. Because first they want to be authentic, right? They want to make sure that we're not inflating numbers, and then number two, that the impact is being like felt throughout the community, right? So those are the two key things that I've seen them focus on whenever they approach these corporations. So I think, needless to say, I feel like that's the reason why, corporations like Phillips 66 keep coming back and sponsoring our initiatives, or one of our, our big fundraising events like our gala.
I'm really you brought that up so succinctly, and it really goes and show the importance of you have to deliver on what
Yes.
you say you're doing. Yes, you can throw the greatest party in the world, but if you're not delivering after the fact or delivering with the programs that you say they're going to sponsor, you may have more turnover, with title sponsors, but because you can show what you deliver service wise, it allows you to say that. And actually, it allows you to focus more on things like PR and event strategy because you do have those solid corporate partnerships in place.
For sure. And we do, for our outreach programs, I mean, we have evaluations. We actually have a full-time person doing surveys. We have a full-time person, doing evaluations of our programs and initiatives. And that really helps tell our story from an outreach perspective.
Fantastic. And, speaking of outreach, I want to talk a little bit, we'll go back to events here for a second, but talk about the importance of a pre-event and a post-event media strategy, and how they're different and why both are, both critically important to the overall success of an event.
That's no one's ever asked me that question, by the way.
They're both important.
It's a great question. Okay, so pre-event coverage is really we want to get it's what we call the hype video, right? We want to get people excited about things, and we want media to help us spread the word about the event so that people get excited and come to our event. So that's really the strategy there. The post event is really us sharing our narrative, right, of what happened, right? And not necessarily because I feel like some people think, well, it already happened. Like, what does it matter? Well, it matters to us in terms of what we're trying to tell out there, right? We want what we're trying to say. Yeah, sure, people see great party photos, but they don't really see but what we want to tell is what the party helped achieve, right? Which is this funding is going to help our outreach programs, our literacy programs, our STEM programs. And that really what is the story is about. So the post-event coverage is really more about the results of what just happened in fundraising events. So it's extremely important for us. And I know a lot of people think, oh well, it's just a bunch of people and having a great time. Surely, yeah, it is a great time. But gosh, look at the amount of support that we're bringing a community together from all walks of life to really come together and give out their support to the Children's Museum so the Children's Museum can continue carrying out all these outreach programs. That's really what it's
Absolutely. Absolutely. And events are so important because it shows the organization's willing to have fun, to
about.
celebrate their cause, and bring money to help feed the programs that they want to serve, whether it's a very serious charity, like if you're doing like a children's cancer charity, that may be a little bit more sober than celebrating, the creativity of children like that the Children's Museum
Right,
does.
right. And I'm always amazed, like Houston, and I'm trying to be biased here because I'm Houston, but gosh, Houston has a lot of amazing philanthropists and advocates, more than any city that I've been to. I'm also biased there, but gosh, I mean, like it's just so many, like, and from all walks of life, like it's just all communities. They really come together and to support a cause, and I always find that amazing to me.
Now, that absolutely true on every level, and I completely agree with that. Houston really has everyone in Houston knows how to have a good time, and every nonprofit that we support and go there, they really do tremendous work, especially in Houston. And I want to go back to media for a second. So talk a little bit about what are some particular media channels that you've found that are really effective at doing event, event coverage, event marketing, event promotion.
They're all effective in their own way, right? But I think the strategy comes in what is it that you want to achieve. And I'll give you an example. For example, radio. A lot of people kind of just diss radio. It's like, who listens to radio anymore? I mean, you'll be surprised. A lot of people do. What we do with radio is we have an event, and I'll give you an example, like Halloween. Halloween, we have an event with it's a free Thursday. It's called Happy House. What we do for that event, it is a free event. What we do with that event is we partner with a local radio station, and that local radio station will hype up the event throughout the entire month prior to the event. And then on the day of the event, they'll do an activation. So we know that for that particular event, radio really works. So it really depends on what you're trying to achieve. We're trying to bring volume to the museum, and that is the platform that we use to create that volume, and that is the end result, right? We get 8,000 plus people in a span of 3 hours. So that is the strategy. For example, digital media and influencers. It really depends on what we're trying to achieve. Like for example, we had an initiative called it's called early childhood. It's early, sorry, I forgot the name, but it's basically early childhood focus. And we were trying to this is right after the pandemic. We reopened our hotspot area, and we invited influencers to basically tap into the mommy audience and create this authentic experience. Granted, we're using influencers and they were paid, but we but we wanted to create a perspective from a mother, influencers that have children that came to this space so they can spread the word and other moms see how they can relate to that experience, right? So it really depends on your target message and to the audience that you're trying to capture. So I think in essence, all media outlets are important. It's just a matter of what is it that you're trying to achieve.
Absolutely. And I love that you really gave the range from probably the oldest media form out there, or the second oldest, print's probably the oldest, but the second oldest in radio, to the newest in digital influencers. But what you proved there, the through line was there's an audience for everything.
Yes.
And when you have 96 events, you can't go to the same media outlets 96 times. They will be like, no, stop, stop. I only want to do these two or three things. So, and that's what I appreciate about you is, the events that we get, not everyone's for our audience. You know that, but you know which ones are. And because of that, you pitch us effectively, and we support all the things that you bring in because you're very strategic with what you're reaching out with. And that's so important.
Very important. Yeah, I wouldn't want to waste people's time. Yeah, sending the wrong thing to the wrong media.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, the other thing that I wanted to talk about here, and I know we're starting to come up on time, but we got time for a couple more questions. What are some ways that you can effectively promote a signature fundraising event like your gala or like your luncheon or even your golf tournament so it resonates both with the broader community as well as the targeted donor audience that you're looking to attract?
Ooh, that's a ooh, that's a toughie. That's a very difficult question. I think ooh. I think
Don't
I'm
tell me I stumped the master here, Henry. Come on.
I am stumped. Normally, and the reason why I'm stumped is because historically we kind of know our audience for like the gala, for example. Now, if we wanted to open the channels to a broader audience, what we would do is we would probably start using our general media for it, right? Like, for example, I would start pitching the news outlets for it. Now, the angle would have to be different. You know, if you talk about local news, they don't normally try to cover stories about a fundraising event. Um, what they want to do is they want to find an angle, right? A relevancy. So the way that I would pitch it to a general media would be different than pitching it to a society media. The pitching will be different. For example, we have our luncheon coming up. So the angle for the luncheon, it wouldn't be like, hey, the Children's Museum is having a luncheon. It will be, hey, we're having a speaker talk about parental exhaustion, which is a relevant topic nowadays. You know, it's all about mental health and how parents are dealing in the historically most stressful time in recorded history, right? So that will be the angle that I would pitch to a general audience, to a general media, so that media could spread it out to the general audience.
That's a perfect answer. That was a really good answer. There was no flubbing there. What I love about that is you're looking under the hood of the event. You can kind of think of
Right,
the event like a car. And
right.
if a speaker's talking about mental health, that's kind of something under the hood,
Right.
and that's what you can go to a more,
Right.
a different outlet with an angle that will actually work for them. I think that was an
Right.
amazing
Yes.
answer.
I tried.
You
I
tried
was
and you
stumped.
succeeded.
Yeah, I was like, "Whew, how am I going to answer this one?"
All right, so we're coming up on time here. So I want you to talk about because there's 96 a year, I'm really curious with this answer from you. What is one thing all successful events have in common?
Ooh. I think, well, I guess it depends. Is it pre-event or post-event?
All the
Um,
above. If you want to give a two-pronged answer, go ahead. Many people one is turned into three or four, so go for it.
right. A successful event to me is for families who attended or anybody who attended our event, they leave there with a smile on their face. That to me is the most important thing. I think, yes, we are a children's museum, but we're also uh, an experiential institution, right? So our goal here is to educate, but also for kids and families to have fun. So for me, my measurement of success for an event is that there are no complaints.
Okay, that's a perfect event. I've never heard of what event is this that I need to attend where no one complains out of hundreds or thousands of people?
I think to me, like if I see a parent and their child leave with their smile on their face, I think we have done our jobs for that day. That to me is the a successful event across the board for many events. You know, even if it's a gala, even if it's an event at the museum, I think that really would be the best answer. If they're happy, if they wanted, they're willing to come back because they had a great experience, we have done our jobs.
Absolutely. And I can see why, so many of the events that you do have such a loyal, devoted following. It's because of people like you and just the first class nature of what you do from a PR perspective and the whole organization does. So I can't thank you enough for the time, Henry. This is a conversation I've been looking forward to having for a long time. So thank you again for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. And for more information on Children's Museum Houston, please visit cmhouston.org. And that will do it for this episode of Fun and Fundraising. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, reminding you to keep it fun, keep it interesting, and your guests will have a great time. Have a great day, everyone, and take care.